Hello and welcome to Media Lit, where we treat each piece of media like great literature. I'm your host, Randy Elaine, and joining me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Kris Ingersoll. Kris, I've got two questions for you. Number one, how are you doing tonight? And number two, onions on the hot dog. Yes, no, maybe.
So good, Randy. As always, stoked to be here with you, stoked to dig into tonight's homework. No spoilers. But to answer your second question, sometimes only grilled. I don't want raw onions on my hot dog. If I want to grill up that onion on a nice toasted bun, cross-cut hot dog with some proper mustard, yes. How are you, bud?
I'm doing so well. I got to rewatch one of the most fun movies of the 90s, despite some of the aura around it. However, I am even more excited by our guest tonight. Kris, this is the very first time that we are joined by a prolific podcaster. We have got the one and only Amanda Rivas. She is co-host of the Socially Distanced podcast, the flagship podcast of the Pop Break. She is also the host of the Anime Pop podcast and just a beloved guest on all sorts of projects for people in the Pop Break family, beyond the Pop Break family. As her co-host, Bill Bodkin would say, she is the human Star Wars encyclopedia. She is the Padme Amidala of anime, and the nicest person Bill knows. But I'm going to second that because, Kris, my very first podcast experience, I was on a panel of folks talking about their favorite doctors from Doctor Who. I popped into this Zoom, and who was waiting for me? The lovely family of folks over at the Pop Break, including Amanda, who was so warm, welcoming, supportive. I've watched her support all of my projects and all the projects of her friends and family, people she cares about. So we've got a really special person here with us tonight. Amanda, how you feeling?
Oh man, I feel like the warm fuzzies right now. You're so sweet, Randy. Thank you so much. And Kris, it's a pleasure to meet you. We're going to have you on Socially Distanced at some point, or Anime Pop if you're an anime fan. Either way, we will get you. And Randy, I'm going to have you too. And I think we're going to give you homework to watch. So I'm
Yeah.
passing that idea about. So we definitely want you guys both. And Randy, it's always a pleasure. You helped re-energize. I love doing the panel with you for Doctor Who because you re-energized me and you got me excited re-engaged
Nice.
back into the world of Doctor Who. So I'm excited, and it's right around the corner with our new doctor. So I'm excited.
Let's go. Randy's walking me through my earliest Who experiences. I am new to Who. And so he's also been my guide into that world.
Welcome, fellow new Whovian. We are glad to have you. Step into the TARDIS. We'll see which version you get.
It's bigger on the inside.
Yes, it is. So glad. So glad you're part of the fandom.
Now, Amanda, you are someone who podcasts regularly. You've talked about every type of media that's out there. That's part of what Media Lit is about. But Media Lit, it's also about building relationships. It's about getting to know our guests. And I've got these two great new buds in Kris and Amanda, but they have not had a chance to get to know each other all that well. However, it turns out that these two wonderful folks both have an affinity for dressing up, for cosplay. So I've put together a little mini gallery of some of your cosplays. All right, so Kris, first up, I've got, because I am a listener of the Socially Distanced podcast, I know this is one of, if not Amanda's favorite cosplay moments that I went digging for and I found. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, Kris, but let me know what's going on here in this shot.
I'm so moved. I'm so moved. There's so much in display. There's power. There's grace. There's beauty. There's Darth Vader. There's Ahsoka Tano. There is a fantastic green zoot suit. It's a really powerful suit and some power poses. Like, this is a group, I think, that cosplays together, that has some shared energies, some shared memories, perhaps. It's Ahsoka Tano for me.
No, Kris, I'm going to turn things over to Amanda. But take a closer look at those faces, because I think she has a couple of earth-shattering revelations for you that will quickly fall into place. Amanda, would you be willing to tell me a little bit about this photo?
Sure. So last year, my son and I went to a con called Fan Expo Dallas. My son
Mm-hmm.
cosplays with me, so that's my little Vader. He's been cosplaying with me, um, probably about almost 4 years. So that's something that we do together, and
Mm-hmm.
we got to meet the voice of Ahsoka Tano, Ashley Eckstein. And of course, in our zoot suit wear is the lovely live action version of Rosario Dawson. Both of them were so warm, so friendly. And in fact, the next day we went to Ashley Eckstein's table to get this picture we took signed. And she looked up at us and she said, I remember you guys. You were the Ahsoka Tano invader from yesterday. They met, I kid you, they met hundreds of people, and I had no makeup. I was not in cosplay the second day at all. She remembered me and my son, and I was like, "Wow." I mean, I had no words when I walked up to her. I was like, "You remember?" I think I just said something like, "You remember us?" And she was so sweet, and she was like, "I remember you." She goes, "Because you have the same energy that Ahsoka does. You were a fantastic Ahsoka because you have the same radiance and the same smile." That was so much more than I ever expected from her. And just from I had heard she was incredibly kind and incredibly nice. And there that was an understatement. She is one of the nicest people. She takes her time with everyone in her line, 25, 30 minutes. That's why her lines are so long at conventions. She takes the time for every person. And Rosario was just as sweet. She's gorgeous in person. Oh my gosh. Like I was like, "You have no blemishes. You have no." And her smile was gorgeous too. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Wow." She put her arm around my son and he's very shy. And so he just kind of melted into her. Probably the envy of most men out there, but both of them were incredibly kind, incredibly warm, and I felt very tall. I'm much taller than both of them. So they're wonderful. If you get a chance to meet them at a con, in which I will see both of them again, they're both coming back to San Antonio, just 2 different cons. I'm most definitely going back.
And that's so incredible. What a phenomenal experience, first of all, for you and your son. Like, it's beautiful that you're welcoming him into this world. And for him to have had such a formative experience so early is really cool. I
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to ask if that's really Rosario in this picture as I'm squinting at the screen. I can't believe that's really her.
It
What a
is.
cool experience.
I could see it in your eyes, Chris. You were trying not to jump to any conclusions, but I could see that look on your face.
Because why would it be Rosario? Uh, Wow.
The Ahsoka Tano duo photo op, and it's one of the best, but honestly, the best con experience I've had to date.
That's such a beautiful photo, Amanda. Thank you so much for talking about that with us. But yeah, it turns out, Chris, 3 Ahsokas, just one in costume at this particular moment. All right, Amanda, I think I've got 2 images on this next slide of Chris. And if you want to give me a general vibe, that's fine. If you want to describe each of them, that's okay too. I'll leave it up to you.
Oh man, I love this so much. Right off the bat, I get an enigmatic vibe, really, especially with the first picture. Um, Mystery and a little bit of stoicism in the first picture. The second picture, still trying to maintain the stoicism and kind of just being enigmatic, but you can see the fun in this too.
Mhm.
The smile. It's one of those where you're trying to stay in character, but clearly he is with this lovely woman who apparently her company he enjoys. So you can see that in the smile, and I love that. She's beautiful, beautiful smile. I'm assuming cat woman because I see some cat ears.
Mhm.
Beautiful photos. I love the detail on the mask. That's the other that stands out to me, especially in the first picture. It kind of gives me the 1989 Batman vibes, whereas the second one gives me the Adam West Batman, and it's so great, so great. I'm not sure if you made them, but they look very very good, and I love. Again a big Batman fan. The attention to detail is beautiful in both, and again I love the juxtaposition between the stoic Batman and the more humorous Adam West vibe Batman.
Mhm.
So hopefully I did that. Hopefully I did that well. I'm just going with it.
Amanda, so kind. Yes, I mean, I'm really grateful that you keyed into that the sort of the dueling Batmen here because I think that's true of the war inside my own self. I can be a pretty broody, grim, and stoic guy, but I've also got a wicked goofy side that my daughter gets to see more than most. But this photo on the right is that's my beautiful wife, Kelly. And the reason I can't quite hold back my joy and quite capture the character of Batman here is she surprised me that night. I had never seen this costume before. I didn't know about this costume. I didn't know she'd be joining me, and she showed up, the cat to my bat, and I was quite tickled that evening.
She's giving me the Anne Hathaway vibes. She
That's
reminds me a little bit of the Anne Hathaway
Mm-hmm.
or
that's
the Batman
exactly the
version.
costume.
Yes.
It's exactly the costume. You nailed it. So yeah, I do like to a different Batman for different days, different moods.
I love it. My boyfriend would pop right now because he is a huge Batman fan. He actually he does Nightwing. He's done Nightwing before, but he actually had the 1989 Batman cowl, like kind of did his own, but it was like one giant piece. So he's like, I can't turn my head, but it looked cool.
If you're gonna do it right, you can't turn your head. That's just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
truth of it.
So did you make these two?
No, no, and that's why I said I don't want to over present myself as a
Oh,
strong
they
cosplayer. I take pieces, I put them together, and I usually customize my own looks. But I'm no tailor. I'm no good with a
no.
needle and
Mhm.
thread.
That's okay. There is nothing that does not disqualify you as a cosplayer. Like that's part of it. Is some people are very good at making everything themselves. They've got the tools, they've got the gifts and the skills. I can't sew worth anything. But I can glue, I can craft. I do what I can with mine. And it doesn't matter. Cosplay community is open to everyone. And that's the thing. Like whether you build your own pieces or you know what, I found it on Amazon last minute. Totally fine. Like or
Mm-hmm.
I did this, I did my own take of this particular character. So don't discount yourself. You look fantastic. So you if you want to call yourself a cosplayer, gosh darn it, you are a cosplayer, Kris. So
Let's
because I
go.
would I would consider you a cosplayer just looking at these two photos.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'll take it from a pro.
Absolutely. And as the bystander here without any cool cosplay photos, because I have proven to be very boring in that area. Um, I promised to dig out some old Halloween costumes at some point. I know somewhere around here I've got little me as Donatello floating around. So, I'll go looking for those for the future. But I pride myself on bringing like-minded people together, and I feel Kris and Amanda, we are now ready to talk about some media together. I am gonna jump through a couple more pictures just real quick. I won't linger on them for quite as long. This Amanda with the crew. I don't know anime. Is this One Piece?
This is. You're right. My
Yeah.
my boyfriend is Rona Razoro. That's my favorite cosplay he does. He lets his that's both of our favorite anime character in terms of male
Nice.
characters. So this is his favorite. So this is his best one. We get stopped everywhere for him. This one. This is my son's favorite. He's Luffy. He's the main character for One Piece. So he will find the One Piece one day. I know my little pirate. And then I am Nico Robin, and she is my favorite female character. She's a book nerd. She's a big book nerd. Just it's kind of the super brainy character, kind of, just she goes through a lot. Like her knowledge is keeping
Mhm.
her. She's very much on the radar for everyone in terms of they want what's in her head. She comes from an island full of archaeologists, and her island was wiped out, unfortunately, because of what they know.
Mhm.
So the knowledge in her head is making her everyone's number one target. So, and I love her. I met the voice actress for her. Her name is Stephanie
Oh,
Young,
nice.
and she was so sweet. She was so sweet. She looks like Nico Robin too. And she was like, you need to cosplay. She was the reason why I started cosplaying her. She's like, you need to cosplay her. You're built like Robin. You look like her. You have the same energy because you love books so much.
Whoop, I'm
Like, you
sorry.
should do it. She's like, you should do it. So, and I'm glad I did. So she's now a regular. I've got different versions of Robin that I now cosplay because of her.
So awesome.
So cool.
And Kris, just one more quick one from you. Maybe you can, Kris, tell us about it.
Yeah. So this is my adorable Hogwarts student. This is my daughter Kennedy. She's doing her best Hermione here, plus cat ears because of course. And I am her Hogwarts professor escort. And so this is a cloak I actually make fairly regular use of, like in the real world in my waking life. It's just a good solid wool cloak for a rainy travel day.
Hmm.
But yeah, channeling my best sort of not quite Harry, but not quite his dad either. Somewhere in between.
Oh, I love
Beautiful
this.
stuff.
Oh,
Beautiful
she's
stuff.
so
All right.
cute. The cat ears, I just can't. I can't handle the cuteness right now.
And her Dorothy boots, those are sparkly,
Oh,
sparkly red boots.
Yeah. Awesome kid. Awesome dad. Awesome mom over here as well. Listen, I've got one more shot of each of you, but I think you'll see I am transitioning us to the task at hand. Uh, Kris, I've just got one more thing for you to describe for me tonight, and then you're off the hook for these visual descriptions. Uh, but what are you seeing here?
Ah, two beautifully executed crows. Two really beautifully executed crows. It's the electrical tape for me. That attention to detail, because that's something that we'll talk more about it, but I love to see that evolution of his look throughout the film. Um,
Hmm.
I can only imagine that these holes were created delicately and precisely because you can see that
Mm.
you're not losing the shirt underneath. Like that's a tough thing to pull off, the half shredded shirt, which we'll watch throughout the film as he takes hit after hit from rounds of bullets. You guys look fantastic.
Hmm.
Not too heavy on the white face makeup, right? Because at no point does he look like the Joker in the film. It's always kind
Hmm.
of just barely there, almost to the point where you can see the skin underneath. Really well done. Who does the makeup?
me.
Okay.
I do my makeup, and Brandon does his. I do help him with his eyeliner, and his lips. So yeah, he's like, "Help me, you draw delicately." He helped tape me up. In fact, the funny thing was we didn't have any electrical tape at home, so we ran in partial cosplay to Walmart, and we're in the parking lot taping ourselves up. But yes, you are right, Kris, that we took the time. Like I looked at different pictures, so did Brandon, to kind of just try to accurately cut holes like where we thought holes were.
Hmm.
We did the detail with the rings. This is actually my first time cosplaying Eric Draven myself. Normally when I cosplay the Crow, there's one female version. Although I know there's a newer one now and I have not read her graphic or her comic yet, but there's one as far as I know, I think there's a second one that's either in the works or it's somewhere, but
Hmm.
there's only one female Crow in the comic series, and her name is Iris Shaw, and I normally cosplay her. We did this for a signing with James O'Barr and Mark DeCassos, and my friend was like, "Hey, do you want to come? Can you come and cosplay?" I was like, "Sure, yeah, we can totally cosplay." And Brandon's like, "Just go as Eric Draven. I know you've always wanted to do it. Just
Hmm.
do it." And that's what I did. I just, did my makeup, just my hair is normally curly like that, so I just kind of threw some more gel in it to get the look, and, Brandon normally has done this a couple of times. His hair is this is the first time he's
Hmm.
actually self-conscious because his hair was short for this one, but I was like, "The Crow has, like, different looks." So,
Hmm.
um, but we both had a lot of fun doing this, and I'm glad we did it. James O'Barr was really impressed. Mark DeCassos was like, "You're, like, the best crows that I've seen." And
Nice.
yeah, and he was surprised that I had the Crow DVD set from when he did the TV show. I was like, "Can you sign this?" And he's like, "You have this?" I'm like, "Yep, still here, still here."
That's great.
Totally, totally beautiful stuff. All right, and Amanda, one more quick task for you.
Sure.
Once again, my guy Kris.
Oh, man, I love these. First of all, I love the intensity in both pictures. Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So I'm getting both the Crow vibes and also with the it kind of reminds me a little bit of I'm a wrestling fan too, so a little bit of Sting vibes as well,
Hmm.
with kind of the 1996 Sting, 'cause, even the paint reminds me of that too. So I love the hair. The wig was great. This is so cute. But again, you can feel the sincerity, you can feel the enthusiasm, the excitement. And again, just especially with the second picture, trying to keep that character and getting into character. I love the other two kids in the picture. They are so cute. But I think the character staying in character award belongs to our tiny crow in the picture. So both of these are so
Yeah.
cute. Again, both the good mix of Brandon Lee Crow vibes and the 1996 WCW Sting vibes too, when he first
That
started transitioning.
It's so the truth. It's so the truth. This is Halloween, like 96 or 97. I couldn't quite nail it down. My little brother's throwing me. He seems too old for it to be 96, but that would have been my memory without seeing the little guy here. Yeah, this was Halloween. I had seen The Crow. I was 8 years old. And I was already into that gothic vibe. Everything about the film was informing me of a person that a facet of my personality that I would come to know more and more over the years. And so, to your point, right as Sting was transitioning, I had this marriage of the character inspiration and this new manifestation in pop culture of that inspiration. And so you get this Halloween costume. And then that's my two brothers. I'm the middle of three boys. And so you get a dead cowboy and a little pirate there.
So you're a Sting fan too?
Oh, yeah.
Even better. Oh my gosh, we're like new best friends.
Let's go. We had a great era, the Attitude Era. I mean, I have not stayed with wrestling the way my younger brother has, but we came up at a great time.
Sting's going to be here in San Antonio in October. So I'll have to be like, you know what? I met somebody who's a little Sting.
Let's go.
And I love the detail in your paint too, because that is very 96 Sting with the little, you don't see people cosplay that one.
My dad did this. My dad always did the makeup for Halloween.
Nice.
I love it. These are fantastic.
Well, guys, I know that was maybe a little bit indulgent on my part, but as I said, I love to bring people together. And I think this demonstrates that you both have this love for character, for story, for dressing up. You're both so fun. You're both such a great time to chat with. And I wanted to make sure it was really clear to both of you that you were about to sit down and chat with someone who was really awesome as well. So it was really fun to be a bystander for that. And thank you so much for playing along with me. I had a great time just kind of soaking it all in. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Randy. I love it. This is original and different, and I love it. You guys are awesome.
That was a ton of fun, buddy. Thank you for putting that together. Well, without further ado, we do have some business to get to tonight. If our listeners haven't quite gleaned the homework assignment just yet, Amanda came to us asking that we rewatch 1994's The Crow. We're going to dip our toes a little bit into the soundtrack, but we're here to talk about that fantastic film tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were very happy to oblige. However, I realized in my rewatch that it's been a little bit longer than I thought. So for anyone else who's maybe not revisited this one in a little while, I'm going to jump into my signature synopsis of The Crow, 1994. Here we go. We open on Devil's Night. Eric Draven has been killed and dramatically pushed through the gorgeous circular picture window in the apartment he shared with his beloved wife-to-be, Shelley Webster. Despite the fact that their scheduled Halloween wedding and sexy gothic romance freak out the police on the scene, we eventually learn that Eric and Shelley were just a couple of quirky drama kids using their spare time to shelter neglected children and fight evictions in their crime and poverty-ridden corner of the city. A voiceover from their young ward, Sarah, lets the audience know that some cultures believe that crows help usher souls into death, but that sometimes, when a crime is particularly egregious, the crow can bring a soul back to life to right the wrong. 1 year later, Eric bursts from his coffin, scared and confused. Of course, we are not confused. Many flashbacks throughout the film confirm the depravity of Shelley's rape and murder at the hands of a particularly sadistic local gang. Eric quickly realizes his purpose, even if he doesn't understand the magical forces behind his resurrection. He dons some drama mask-inspired makeup and takes on a persona of dark and gritty vengeance who cannot be killed. Eric starts investigating the criminal network responsible for these atrocities, offing several campy goons along the way. Each kill is designed to mock the victim's identity, and the crow leaves his calling card at each crime scene, a simple drawing of a crow painted with blood and/or lighter fluid. Eric reconnects with beloved friend and street urchin Sarah and befriends a down-on-his-luck cop named Albrecht, who has taken Sarah under his wing and who even stuck with Eric's late wife Shelley in her final hours. Ultimately, Eric is able to track his final target down to a crime den overseen by a chaos-loving, incestuous overlord named Top Dollar. He takes out most of the criminals, but Top Dollar and his half-sister figure out that killing Eric's crow companion will cancel out his invulnerability. They kidnap Sarah to lure Eric into the open, but luckily, Albrecht shows up to help, and Eric has just enough magic left in his system to defeat Top Dollar by infusing him with the memory of his wife Shelley's 30 hours of pain in the hospital, all at once. Eric bids farewell to his friends and is ushered back to the peace of the afterlife following a graveside makeout session with an angel-coated Shelley. He leaves behind his wedding ring as a keepsake for young Sarah. All right. Amanda, I sense you've seen this movie the most out of the three of us. Do you have anything that I failed to emphasize that you'd like to add or reframe? Because I want to make sure our expert gets the final say here.
Oh, I really like it. I feel like you summarized the points concisely. You got main characters in, and I mean, other than just mention, if you wanted to mention everybody else on the side, but you nailed that. I think this was a really good, and I like the humorous, some of the humor that was infused into this too. I liked it a lot, so I'm here for it. You did a great job.
So Amanda, at this point in the show, this is where we like to really get to know our guest a little bit better. I realize tonight we've had a chance to do a deep dive into all of your cosplay work. But we want to ask you a few questions just to dig a little bit deeper and see why this connection is so particularly vital. Kris, do you want to jump in with our first question?
Yeah, absolutely. I've wanted to know since we started the conversation, what is like your earliest memory related to the film? What got you connected to The Crow?
Well, so first of all, I watched it when I wasn't supposed to watch it. I was 8 as well when I watched it, and my dad rented this movie. And he's a big Bruce Lee fan. So it was, we watched a lot of Bruce Lee movies, Chuck Norris. Have you seen some Steven Seagal? Jean-Claude Van Damme. My dad's a big action / martial arts person. And so he was like, hey, I want to get this movie because it's Bruce Lee's son and there's like a curse and there's I remember him talking about that and pulling the video cassette. And so we sat down, we watched it. He's like, don't tell your mom. I'm like, okay, I will tell mom. And so that was my first just enjoying watching it with my dad. It was kind of, we watched wrestling together too growing up for me. So it's one of those where it's like father-daughter bond moment. But I remember just being really captivated with just Brandon Lee's look. I was like, who is this Vision? I didn't know he had passed. I knew nothing about the background or anything in the movie, but I was like, who is this guy? Like, hey, he's way cuter than the boys in my class. When I was in middle school, elementary school. But I remember just being really impressed and being taken with how awesome Brandon Lee looked because it was so unique. It wasn't like a clown. It wasn't like you never saw that look. And I grew up in a more conservative household. So the whole look was not something I saw a lot of. So I was very attracted to the goth culture and goth feel, because it was so different from what I was exposed to. So kind of my earliest memories again are just thinking like, that's so cool because it's unique, and sitting with my dad watching it.
That's wonderful. There's nothing like those like early memories. I mean, we all love stories for a reason. And I find often sharing them with our parents early on is a big reason why. That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, what about you guys? Like how did you guys wind up watching it the first time?
So for me, same age, coincidentally, 8 years old, certainly too young to really watch this movie. But I think it's because the sequel was probably forthcoming by that time, like 96, 97. And so, yeah, it was on Blockbuster shelves. I was into this vibe. I think similar to your attraction. It was something that wasn't a part of my everyday life. I'm like a suburban kid from outside of Boston. Things around me were pretty neat and tidy. Not nearly the grit and grime of the Detroit that's on display in this film. Nothing like the gothic underworld that Eric Draven seeps into as he goes after these guys who are living in a very seedy part of the world. So yeah, I was attracted to all of it, and I just remember being, I think I said earlier, woken up to a facet of myself that I would come to know much better later on as I continued to grow. So yeah, this cool is the only word. I think you said it a few times. It absolutely oozed cool. What about you, Randy?
Yeah, so for me, it came actually a little bit later, but my reasoning is not entirely different from what both of you had to say. Um, my parents were pretty deeply involved in, what I watched, what I did not watch. There was a lot of say in that process. As I got a little bit older and got later into high school and college and started to make a little bit of my own money from different jobs, I was building the CD collection. I was building the DVD collection. I think I've mentioned on this very podcast before that I would travel to my college dorm with like 3 or 4 or 5 giant Rubbermaid bins full of like DVDs and CDs because I wasn't me if they were not on display. And I was disappointed in myself to realize I sold my copy of The Crow, but for many years that was a prized DVD in the collection. It wasn't a fully elite edition, but it was that box that was just like a little bit thicker than the other ones. It stood out on that shelf just a little bit more. I love to point it out. It was a really common film for a few years for me to make my college friends sit and watch with me. Some of them had seen it before. Some folks I got to introduce it to. And I think the appeal, you mentioned it being something unique. And I think it was me finally having a chance to explore some of those properties and vibes that had been kept from me for so long that, I was kind of taught to be a little bit scared of. Why would it look so creepy? Why would there be this dark persona? I really enjoyed that part of my life because usually the story's got a lot more depth to it. And I think we'll get into some of the complexities of Eric and what's going on with him later on. But yeah, it was a really special movie to me, especially in that I'm a young adult trying to learn how to be cool about movies since. All right, Amanda, moving on to the next question. Now I'm going to frame this a little bit differently than a usual episode. Because when you were kind enough to agree to come on the show, I reached out to you and I was like, Amanda, the sky's the limit. You can talk about anything that you want to talk about on this show. We will do the homework. We will back you up. We will get to know you. I know through your own work on Socially Distanced, I believe you have at least a couple of different episodes coming out on The Crow at some point in the next several months as the reboot is approaching. Which leads me to my question, which is, how is it that The Crow is so ingrained into who you are, your attitude, your style, your view of the world, that given a chance to talk about anything, you still knew this was the property to talk about on this podcast tonight?
Oh man, I love this film so much for a couple of reasons. One, the first time I saw it, kind of subsequent times since,
Mm-hmm.
while yes, everyone's like, "Oh, it's violent, it's revenge, it's angry." The first time I saw it, I reviewed it as a love story. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Man, I hope that one day I can meet someone who loves me that much where they come back from the dead for me. God forbid anything happens to me like that." But, you just
Right, right.
the idea of that kind of love, that real love doesn't die. And that's kind of what I've always searched for my whole life, is that type of love, that devotion, that commitment to each other. Um, to me, it's such a powerful love story. It's resonated in probably all of my relationships since. And I loved the goth aesthetic. And it's funny because I didn't wear tons of black growing up. Like I wear black all the time. My sister tells me we're gonna have to t-shirt intervention for you because you just wear nothing but black. Um, and but I loved the look. I loved the feel, the vibe, the music. I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan. So I got pulled into the soundtrack. There's just so much of it that resonated with me. Just the Eric Draven character, kind of the hardships he's going through, kind of just the journey that he goes through. It's such a beautiful story that it's always just touched my heart. And I never get tired of watching it. Every time they re-release it in the theaters, I am always there. I've never missed it. Um, it's just something that, again, is just it's just so powerful in terms of, again, just the love, the feeling that I enjoy and that I've always looked for, and then just the vibe, and it reminded me, so a lot of it too when I was in high school and I was rewatching it, it reminds me a lot of my older sister, which I don't talk about her very much because I lost her years ago, and she died of cancer. Um, my older sister had the goth look. She had, like, the long curly hair and, like, the lighter makeup with the black lipstick and always wore black. And for me, this also kinda tied in because just that goth look reminds me so much of my sister, and that's also why I wear a lot of black, actually. I don't put that out there very, very
Mhm.
much, but I do that because it reminds me of my sister. And, so for me, it's always been a very personal connection in a lot of different ways, which is why I very much love this movie. I never get tired of talking about it. I can talk about it all day. It's a great film.
Chris, how about you? Has this worked into your style, attitude, day-to-day life in any way?
Yeah, first and foremost, I just want to emphasize the idea that this is a love story.
Mhm.
Absolutely, first and foremost, this is a beautiful love story. Um, so the character of Eric Draven isn't a macho, a traditionally kind of toxic. He's not a violent person in life, right? He's a lover, not a fighter. He's a hopeless romantic from all the flashbacks that we can see. But in his vengeance persona, um, he has a lot of the same things that I like in the heroes I've come to love elsewhere in media. Anti-heroes maybe is too general a term. I'm not sure if you can call Batman an anti-hero, but he's no Superman. He's no Boy Scout, right?
Mhm.
Eric Draven isn't out there as pure violence, pure anger, or pure vengeance. He's not there to just harm any person who stands in his way. In fact,
Mhm.
he'll encounter a room full of criminals and say, like, you guys can all go. It's him that I'm here
Yep.
for. I have a specific
Mhm.
purpose. I'm an avenging angel, right? And so that's something that I really appreciate in my angry, vengeful, driven characters. They're not off the handle. They're not violent for violence sake. There's something more pure, something more honorable driving the heart of that character. And for him, it's the love that you highlighted. And so while I might wear a lot of black, and I certainly have, I'm a drama kid. I watched this a lot in my drama years through high school, right? It's part of that identity. I think mostly this was is an early archetype of the kinds of heroes, protagonists that I've come to like most in media.
Now, I personally don't have much of an answer here, having come to this movie a little bit later in life, but I do wanna riff on what you're all saying about this being a love story. Um, One thing I do love to talk about is one of my favorite books of all time, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I've mentioned it, I think, at least a couple times on this podcast. Um, but a common refrain in that book that we hear a few different ways is the author Tim O'Brien saying, "But it's not a war story; it's a love story." That underneath everything that's happening, um, there's a relationship, there's emotion and feeling. So I love that, we can pull that theme out of a couple of different pieces of literature. And interestingly enough, in prepping for this podcast, I've never read any of the Crow comics. I'm sorry. Uh, but I was kind of surprised to listen to Tony Todd, who we'll talk about a little bit later, talking about his character Grange. And he's a really professional actor. He had this deep sense of who this character was that we don't necessarily see in the movie, but he was saying that, his guy is supposed to be a Vietnam War veteran. He's this sort of corporate assassin, and just felt relevant since I found myself talking about the Vietnam War, but that makes sense. I mean, this movie is coming out at the same time that people like Tim O'Brien and other Vietnam War vets are publishing all sorts of books and films about the Vietnam War in the previous decade.
Of that. Great call out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess then it brings us around to the less lovey-dovey and gushy bits of our earliest dive in here. I'll start with you, Amanda. You'll love this piece of media, but does it have any flaws?
The tough part is, and I when y'all sent me the outline, I was like, "Ooh, this is a tough question." And I'm really just being very particular because I do absolutely love this film. The
Mhm.
hard part is any flaws that are coming, I think maybe because of what happened, and I know we're gonna talk about what's
Mm.
happened to Brandon Lee. We didn't get a whole lot of Shelley, and again, I know that
Mhm.
wasn't the writing, that wasn't it had nothing to do with the actress. Again, it just was the circumstances, and even then, again,
Mhm.
I'm just being very nitpicky. The other actually, Randy, it's funny you brought up Tony Dodd because I feel like that was the one thing I would have loved to have seen more of. Was a little bit more Grange. And I'm being very nitpicky. I mean, he
Oh,
did
yeah.
great with the part he had, and he's
Mhm.
one of the characters that I would have loved to have seen more about him. I honestly kind of wish he was one of those that Brandon Lee went after too. And
Mm.
it's hard though because, I've read the graphic novel many, many times. It is fantastic. If and Chris, I'm assuming you've read it as well.
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good, and it's hard. I it's hard because the movie pulls so much together, but yet there's a lot of other characters. There's a lot that's left out from the graphic novel. But at that time, and again, given kind of the more violent nature of the
Mhm.
graphic novel, I think more of the violence would have transferred over from the graphic novel if they had adapted it that way. Um, Whereas again, and it might be something now, and I've heard a rumor, and I need to kind of dive into it more, where
Mhm.
there was one moment where, the thought was adapting this into an anime or like an animated series, which I would be here for. And then you can
Mhm.
adapt it into the comic into from the graphic novel because you have that medium where you can explore and still soften and keep the love story here and be able to translate some of that art from the graphic novel into animated form. So I feel like, you know, again, my only very, very minor flaws, again, not no fault again of anybody's, but would have been nice to have gotten a little bit more Shelley if the movie was flushed had to, the circumstances hadn't happened. More
Mhm.
Tony Dodd because he was great. Um, and just there was a lot left out of the graphic novel. Again, I'm just being very picky because I love this film so much, and I think even for the time frame that it's in, the way it was shot, it translates just as well 30 years later as it did back in '94.
I think those are fair call outs. I could hear you straining as such a deep fan of the
I
film
know.
to pull out
I feel
anything.
my heart hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'll pitch it to you, Randy, next. But I just want to say you have me so excited about the idea of a Crow anime because
Mm.
it's not a flaw in the film. You can't do a live action that looks and feels like the artwork of that graphic, but the artwork is so far removed from what the film actually looks and feels
Yes.
like, right? It's not concrete and gritty. It's barely there. It's ephemeral in a lot of ways. I would love to see an anime that brings that to life well.
Yeah. I hope they do make it. I think there's a quote, and again, I'll find it and send it to you guys from James O'Barr, where I think he was like, "We can do it. It's just I have to pay Hollywood to do it." Like I think it's just something in the licensing where they
Mhm.
can't make it happen. I'm like, please, 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 please. I mean, y'all are doing Suicide Squad Isekai as an anime. Come on, we can most
Mhm.
certainly get a Crow anime and even do it with the mullet, like the '80s.
Yes.
I'm here for it.
That would be so
Yes.
cool.
Well, Randy, you tell me what you thought about this movie upon a rewatch 15 years since your last time. Anything to call out?
I feel really similar to Amanda on this one. Obviously, the circumstances of Brandon Lee's tragic death, they had to shoot around it, employ a body double, leave, I'm sure, a lot of good story on the table, tie up some loose ends. And from everything I've read, it sounds like everyone in the cast and crew was devastated. They weren't even fully sure if they wanted to finish the film. There are all these rewrites, and things like that. So, sort of like Amanda, I'm gonna give it the disclaimer of not really being a flaw. It's maybe just a symptom. I don't want them to turn it into a 3-hour movie, but I wouldn't have minded like a little bit more time. Uh, to see that transition because in some of the early moments after Eric's transformation, he does seem to be basking in the violence a bit more, but there's a shift there. And I'd love to see that play out just like a tiny bit slower, but I'm being really nitpicky here. This is a really special movie that I really love. How about you, Chris? Does this film have any flaws for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, same disclaimer applies. There's one super small nitpick. For
Mm,
me, we moved into understanding how to defeat the crow too quickly without
mm,
real, like we just kind of yada yada past that one. Bai Ling is all seeing. She's got the sight. She like she witnesses the man once, sees the bird. She's like, oh well, that's it right there. You just killed the bird. You killed the man.
Yeah.
It happens. It happens fast. I think we could have spent more time getting there dramatically, so the audience feels the realization coming and can kind of come to that conclusion too.
Yeah, that's one of those like one of those moments where it feels like a movie of its era, right? Because I might get into this a little bit more later, but the way they deployed Bai Ling in this movie with this just sort of like vague Eastern mystical influence is not very advanced or thoughtful. And like similarly, like the way crime is being dealt with in this film, right? Like we're in the early years of the war on drugs, and like this really heavy like bipartisan like crackdown on drug use, and this very like black and white view of the law and drug addiction. And I think having all those themes at play in popular culture maybe led to some of those moments where I was trying to figure out where the line was between Eric basking in the violence and being this gentle soul. And overall, I think they win and get it right. But yeah, sometimes the vibe feels a little bit strange.
It's funny you mentioned that because I wanted to give the film credit for
Hmm.
having uh, a somewhat nuanced message around
Hmm.
human corruption, because there is an implied storyline of police corruption. There's
Hmm.
something going on where Ernie Hudson's character seems like he's the cop who does the right thing, and he's now on the outside because of that.
Hmm.
And you've got this
Yeah.
antagonistic detective character that it feels like there must have been more there, where you would have had
Hmm.
ugliness on both sides of that line. The
Yeah.
the criminals in the street, the cops who aren't doing the job either, who perpetuate these cycles, and the few good people caught in between trying to do what they can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is a great point. I mean, yeah, that one detective, I was like, well, every time I watch the movie, I'm just like, I don't like you. I really don't like you. But you're a good actor because you make me not like you. And you can tell
This
like
is true.
there's more to the story. And it's just I wonder, it's one of those questions I wonder about where it's like if the movie had gone as planned, would that have been something that would have been kind of just looked at more? Is one of those things that
Hmm.
because of the circumstances they had to overlook or cut. We will never know.
Absolutely. Uh, I'm looking forward to celebrating a lot of the faces that show up in this movie. But I think it's time to deal with the elephant in the room, which is you can't talk about this film without talking about the tragedy surrounding this film. It's the death of Brandon Lee, um, filming a sequence, this quote unquote prop gun fires, leading to this fatal injury. One of the other actors on set, has to live with the fact that he played a role in this death. It pauses the production. We eventually come back. We get rewrites. We get things moved around. We get body doubles. And it leads to this really sort of eerie aura around the whole thing. And the more you dig, the more it becomes a part of the film's identity, because you hear about just how much this project meant to Brandon Lee. Sounds like he was a really true, genuine fan of the comics and the character. It sounds like he was given a lot of say in the production of the film and trying to make sure that they got the vibe and the feel of Eric just right. So Amanda, the circumstances of this film, the death of Brandon Lee, what are some ways that influences the way you think about this film?
Well, I when I learned that Brandon Lee had passed, it just made me realize, and every time I watch it, I come away with a new appreciation for his performance
Mhm.
and how much we lost when he passed. Because what
Mm.
I did when I especially as I got older, I started rewatching some of his other movies and kind of going on a that's what I usually do. If I have a crush on somebody, I just go deep dive. Same thing with Jeff Goldblum. I think I've watched everything Jeff Goldblum's been in. So I did the same with Brandon Lee. I'm like, I want to know more about him. I want to see other work of his. And watching
Mhm.
him, especially with Rapid Fire, was my other favorite Brandon Lee movie. And the charm and the humor that he had, just the kind heart. And you see all the backstage interviews and you hear that he had you read the other interviews with others who've worked with him and just how well liked he was. You hear his sister talk about him, and she follow her on social media, and just
Mm-hmm.
you hear just how good of a person he was, and just knowing that this was somebody that was just starting to find. I really feel like this was going to be his breakout role. His performance was incredible. There's a big difference between watching again Rapid Fire and The Crow. This was I remember reading that he packed himself in ice in a coffin. He dropped a lot of weight for the part. I mean, he was
Hmm.
already not very big to begin with, but he lost weight to
Mm-hmm.
look gaunt. Very method acting like Christian Bale does, I think. And just knowing that this was just the tip of the iceberg and that we lost that. It was not only a personal loss for his family, obviously, and his friends and his loved ones, but where would we be now? What could he have done now? Could we have seen him in like a Marvel project? Could we see him in a DC project? Could he
Mm-hmm.
have been a Batman? Like, just,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much potential lost. And the fact that I remember hearing that The Crow, he had just signed to do 2 more films, that this was supposed to be a
Mm.
trilogy was like, what?" Like, and I can't even imagine where they would have gone with the story. So sometimes when I watch the film, again, I appreciate how much heart and soul he put into this performance, and blessed that we even got it, and how much it impacted. Because again, Chris, I don't know if you knew this or not, but, um, one of the stunt doubles who was Brandon Lee's one of his close friends, Chaz Stahelski, director of John Wick.
Mm.
And just knowing the impact that this had and how many doors it opened for so many of us who love the franchise, love the music. Um, I mean, it is truly a huge loss, but at the same time, I'm glad we have it, that we still get this moment. We still get Brandon Lee's, I think, finest work
Mm-hmm.
to that point. So much love to Brandon Lee forever.
All said. I think for me, it's upon this rewatch, it was a really similar experience where his performance just left me so desperate to imagine a world where we had
Mm-hmm.
more. Like to hear you say that he could be Batman really moved me because he would have been a great Begins Batman, right? But for me, during this watch, it was something about his voice. He's not out
Mm.
there doing something with his voice as the Crow as he approaches his next victim. He's not affecting anything to enhance the persona. It's just his voice. And there's something that continually warm about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't help but look at his smile behind that makeup, hear that voice, and see a whole career that could have launched off of this film and so many beautiful performances that we could have benefited from because we've talked before, I think when we talked Equilibrium, we talked about that changing action star, right? The move away from the incredibly overly buff and absurd action heroes of the
Mm-hmm.
80s and early 90s towards something more interesting in our male protagonists. And he feels like he was the perfect early archetype for that shift.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. And I would agree with both of you. There's this warmth in the role. There's this believability to it. Like there are some scenes that I love in this movie. They genuinely move me. And on paper, like they almost shouldn't work. Or if anyone else tried to do the exact same scene, it might be something we were poking fun at and joking around about. Like I think possibly the first thing he says in this movie, I didn't fact check myself, but it might just be when he stumbles into the apartment and the cat's still there and he's like, Gabriel, and he picks up the cat. But I just feel it and I believe it. That could so easily have come off as just like a farcical, silly moment in the wrong hands. And the way that he can make me just like believe him that he cares, that he wants this connection means so much. You both mentioned some of those behind the scenes featurettes, like one little snippet I pulled out today. And one of these behind the scenes things they filmed while they were in production. But you can see how excited he is to talk about the character. Uh, in this passage he chose to quote from one of his favorite novels, Sheltering Sky by Paul Bowles, knowing what's about to happen to him is wild to hear. He says, the quote is, "Death is always on its way, but the fact that you don't know when it will arrive seems to take away from the finiteness of life. We get to think of life as an inexhaustible well, yet everything happens only a certain number of times. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20? And yet it all seems limitless. And just to hear him reflecting, you know, on how fleeting life can be and knowing how close he is, probably closer than he ever would have predicted to being at the end. It adds a level of like really just gravitas to it, that you couldn't really recreate.
Kind
Uh,
of the funny thing is that, um, when you read the graphic novel, and Kris, I'm sure you feel it. Eric
mhm,
Draven in the graphic novel is so different. There's a
mm,
romantic aspect to him, but he is and it's a trauma response in a lot of ways because sometimes when you see, especially even their deaths in the graphic novel are um, far more just vicious to the point where
mhm,
he's driven mad. So he's
mm,
more just kind of batshit. And pardon me for am we allowed to cuss on this podcast politely?
yes.
Okay. Um, but like batshit crazy is the best description I could put it. And I feel like Brandon Lee, if he had portrayed him like the graphic novel, especially with kind of the limitations that you have when you're adapting the material,
Mhm,
he could have been a very unlikable. I don't think people would have been able to sympathize with the Eric Draven character as much if he had pulled it line by line. And he uses some of the lines in the movie, but in that same tone that the graphic novel is. What I love about Brandon Lee's performance is he makes Eric Draven relatable and likable to where you're like, wow, like he made it his own. And Kris, I don't know if you want to chime in on that because you've read the novel too. So
mhm,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great nuance to call out, right? Because his Eric Draven is quite lucid. He sort of comes back, and once he gains his bearings, he's very aware of what's going on, of his past life, of what he's moving forward to do. Um, and it is quite different from the graphic novel, where he's more cracked and continuing to crack. And to hear you describe it, it almost sounded like it could have come across as a bad Joker performance, like a person who's so detached. And I don't
mhm,
think we were ready yet to sympathize with characters like the Joker,
mhm,
um, like your Killmongers, right? We weren't ready
yeah,
for that yet. So I think you're right. It probably would not have worked if we had a character that either seemed to enjoy the violence too much or was less present for characters like Sarah, right?
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great call out.
Now, speaking of adaptation, I don't want to linger on this for too long because we're here to talk about this 1994 film that we love. But we are getting a reboot with a new Eric Draven at the end of August, played by Bill Skarsgård. I have kind of actively not done a ton of research into this film at this point. I've watched the official trailer once. Um, and I've been trying to figure out exactly how I feel about the fact that it's happening. I know the director of the 1994 film does not believe anyone should ever step into the role again. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I just want to briefly give each of you a chance, if you've happened to check out the trailer, or if you have any thoughts about whether you think this should happen, or what you might be excited about, or just how are you feeling? I don't think there's a right or wrong way to feel, but like how are you excited and how are you apprehensive with this reboot on the way?
I'll answer real quick, so then I can let you really ISO here, man, because I think you'll have maybe more passion.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, I would prefer that they revisit the franchise rather than the character of Eric Draven. There's ways to tell Crow stories without going back there.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we have new generations who come up. Not everybody gets a great education in great cinema from friends and family, right?
Facts.
And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to have this conversation on the Black Panther, right? This is a very recent and real version of that conversation. Um, and what this doesn't have is the weight of recency like Black Panther
Yep.
has. This is a much, much older film. And so I do hate to see our human sentimentality limit great art, if that is what is before us. Great art. I can't promise that this reboot would be, but that's sort of my take.
I agree with that, Kris. That was well said because I love this film. It's one of my top 2 favorite films of all time. This and Jurassic Park are my 2. I never get tired. I know all the lines.
Mm-hmm.
I love everything about these films. And, but I wanna go into this experience with an open mind.
Yep.
Of course, it gives me heartburn that we've gone through so many leads. It's been in development hell for years. I
Mm-hmm.
remember talking to James O'Barr at a Comic-Con, I think in 2014, about the film. I wanna say this when Luke Evans was still attached to the project, and he was
Oh
all
wow.
excited and hopeful and everything. And yeah, then I remember Jason Momoa being attached, and then, I think it was, not Charlie Hunnam, Jack Houston. I mean, it just went through development hell, and that always is of concern. I think Bill Skarsgård is a solid choice. I'm not I know the tattoos, some of those, just some of the aesthetic, I'm like, "Okay." A lot of people were giving him a mess about the mullet. I'm like, "You know what? I kinda like the little nod to the graphic novel." That's
Mm-hmm.
how I looked at it, and I'm kind of hoping I what I don't want is a reboot of the film, straight up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I don't want, but and I'm trying to be open-minded going into it because I'm thinking that's in my head, and what I'm hoping for is that this is not a reboot of the film. What I would
Mm-hmm.
love to see is one, I think, Chris, you brought an excellent idea up about there are plenty of different crows in the franchise. They could have gone that route, but at the same time, I think from the original graphic novel, and that was the idea when I talked to James O'Barr back in 2014, was that it was supposed to be closer to the graphic novel than the movie was. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think and what I'm hoping for is that they pull from that material because there's more characters to work with, more of the bad guys. There's a different the way that Eric and Shelley die is different. Um, and you can tell the story. And I think now at this point in time with how I guess how exposed we've been to other darker superhero, supervillain
Mm-hmm.
types, edgier types, I think this would be a good time now to bring out the graphic novel version of Eric Draven if you're going to go that route. So go with the crazy, go with the more intense because we can handle it now in our era. Um, and I think if you go with the graphic novel material, you can you can make this work. So people are like, okay, yes, the name is the same, but it's not the 1994 movie. The 2 main concerns I had that are still lingering with me, one, Shelley has like a vision or it's
Mm-hmm.
where she sees something. I don't like I guess it's almost like she's a supernatural premonition and I'm here like I hope they don't give her powers. Please don't. Because
Mm-hmm.
then my question would be why is she not back? If he has no powers, why is she why is she not back from the dead? That would make more
Right.
sense.
Right.
The other concern I have is the soundtrack, and I know that's like a nitpicky
Mm-hmm.
thing, but one of the key pieces that makes this 1994 film so great is the soundtrack. And that's gonna be a tough call because I really feel like when you ask people about soundtracks, they will either name The Crow is usually the number 1 answer I get for best soundtrack. Number 2, I've heard Queen of the Damned, which is fantastic, by the way, too. Um, Oregon, what is the film with Hugh Jackman? Is it The Greatest Showman? Is that the one?
Yes.
I've heard that one too. So you hear like different mixes, but everyone talks about the soundtrack for The Crow. That's going to be a tough one to
Yeah.
recreate.
Do, do we know what they're doing for that? Because Trent Reznor is right there, killing it left and right.
I know he did a great job with the Challengers soundtrack. That's been living rent free in my head.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that one for sure.
I don't think they've
Yeah,
put out a set list though yet. I'm sure
yeah.
FK Twigs is going to have a song. She has to have one, a Shelley.
Yeah, I think that'd be perfect. Yeah, without having the full depth of understanding of the comics and whatnot, and just watching the trailer once, actually for the first time today, I watched it, and it both slightly worried me and slightly calmed me. And when I say it slightly worried me, at least in the clips from the trailer, I did not see any of that. I didn't feel any of that warmth coming off of Eric, which makes this version so special to me. It might be there. I just didn't necessarily feel it in the trailer. The world also felt just so much bigger. There seemed to be like mentors at play. There was one line I'm probably reading too much into, like he's going to be able to save Shelley in some way. And I was like, that's a different story. And that made me a little bit apprehensive, but it also kind of calmed me because whether this movie is excellent or a flop, I don't think it's going to erase the 1994 version, no matter what. So I kind of stepped away from the trailer being like, you know what? I can go to this movie with an open mind. I can have a good time. And if I enjoy it, that's wonderful. And if I don't enjoy it, 1994 is right there. This is not the same inky, dark, Tim Burton inspired, sort of world that we had in 1994. It's something different. So I'm happy to know this film we're about to continue talking about tonight. It's always going to be there for me no matter what. All right. Moving on to our next agenda item, folks. I would like to check in just and revisit some of the great character actors in this film because it it's just a nonstop carousel of just like amazing faces in big parts, small parts, medium parts. We're not going to have enough time to capture every single supporting actor here. But I was thinking maybe we could each just pick one to take a quick moment to celebrate. Kris, I'm gonna ask you to jump in first with your most exciting character actor appearance in The Crow 1994.
Okay, thank you for coming to me first. Really excited to call out my nemesis and Jay Pritchett's Earl Chambers. Our character Gideon was portrayed by John Polito. I don't know if you know this actor from other things, but for me, he is Earl Chambers. He is closets, 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 closets. As scummy today selling furniture as he was back then running his pawn shop. I think he was tremendously well served in this film. It's just the right kind of role for him. Gives him the chance to be loud and obnoxious and sort of unapologetic or unafraid of anybody, even top dollar. So I thought he was really well deployed here.
Mm-hmm. Amanda, how about you? Who's your top character actor who showed up for this film?
So I came with a backup because I knew somebody was going to pick Gideon first before me because
Yeah.
I loved John Polito in this. I quote probably more of his lines just in my daily life than, especially from the pawn shop scene where he first encounters Eric Draven. I quote a lot of those lines. And then the bar scene where, it's or when he says, no, it wasn't the bar scene. It was definitely the pawn shop scene where he's like, oh, shit on me. I say that probably more than I should.
Other than that, my day sucked.
Yes, I've done that one too. Other than that, my day sucked. I'll even say it that way too. So he's got some of the best lines in the film. But my backup, and it is tough because everybody does a
Mm-hmm.
fantastic job. And I'm it's going to be an off the wall choice, but I have to give it to this is tough again because I enjoyed everybody, but Angel David with Skank. That was such a nuanced character. He doesn't feel that way, but the more you watch it, he has everything from like his that skank right there, skank dead, with that moment of vulnerability. Like he's almost likable at certain points where you're like, maybe he's not that. No, he's really a terrible person, or he has some of the most best or the most comedic moments of the movie. But it is not overdone, and that is hard to do with a character like Skank and the dialogue and the dialect he's using. Because you can go, that could have been completely overdone. It could have been a mess. But just even the expressions in his eyes and just oh yeah, I'm a little worm on a big fucking hook. I mean, he has some of these lines where it's just, again, it cracks you up, but at the same time, like especially when he's losing his mind in front of Top Dollar and he's like, he's recounting what's happened. He's like, and just his performance is so animated that is so tough to do, but yet he has those vulnerable moments, those comedic moments. And again, everybody writes him off because, again, of his particular dialect, the accent, just kind of the goofy lines, but it's a very nuanced performance. So I know it's an off the wall choice, but that is a hard thing to do. So again, that is my choice. And that is going to be Angel David as Skank.
I want to validate that super hard. Sorry, Randy, but he's the only one I wanted to give a hug. Skank is the only one who feels like he's losing his family as each next victim gets picked off, right? Um, yeah, he seems just very taken with this like terrible gang of people that he's a part of. But there's something innocent about him. You can't put your finger on it, but validate your point hard.
Yeah, I was not expecting Angel to make any lists, but I'm thrilled that he did. Because you're right, it's a special performance. He's the last one to go from that gang, which is interesting. And we do, in a way, I don't want to say fall in love with him exactly, but he's the only person from that original gang that doesn't get that real personal vendetta sort of kill. He just goes out the window. It's, maybe it rhymes with what happened to Eric. But I think I also love that because of what I mentioned earlier. I don't necessarily want to see Eric putting 7 knives into a guy's chest through every major organ in alphabetical order. It's not necessarily what I want. There's so many great options here. We already shouted out, Tony Todd, the Candyman himself, the man who would, hold hundreds of live bees in his mouth just to get a cool shot. Yes, there were real live bees in his mouth, which is wild. But we already shouted him out. So I'm gonna do a very quick shout out to a guy who did not necessarily mean anything to me the first time I saw The Crow. But when I was rewatching it for this podcast, meant everything to me. And that is none other than David Patrick Kelly as T-Bird. When I first saw The Crow, I had never watched Twin Peaks. I since became a big Twin Peaks head. Kris, I know you haven't fully gone down that fandom yet. Amanda, do you have any Twin Peaks in your repertoire?
I have watched some of it off and on, and I've enjoyed it. I need to watch it all the way through though.
And I'm like, what? I was like, this T-Bird performance, it's unhinged. It's so fun. Why is this feeling so familiar to me? Only to realize that I'm looking at my guy, Jerry Horn from Twin Peaks, not rocking his cleaned up look with the glasses as the brother of business mogul Benjamin Horn, but playing this unhinged character. And it's a wild ride and a wild energy he brings to this movie. He's got the whole message about the move. We all just did our own little T-Bird dance for viewers at home. But yeah, whether he's talking about the Erie Canal or maybe my favorite line reading in the entire movie was, "One of my crew got himself perished," which is phenomenal stuff. All right, this isn't on the agenda, but like, can we just take a moment to shout out? Yeah, I don't want to call it necessarily a character actor performance because Albrecht is so central to this film. But I think this might be my favorite Ernie Hudson performance, full stop. I'm getting looks of affirmation from my fellow podcasters here. Amanda, tell me why you agree.
Oh man, Ernie Hudson was so warm and just very caring. You can tell he's burnt out, but at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
he still cares. No matter how much he's burnt out, he chose to still get involved and still help out. He helped out Sarah. He's just it's just one of those roles. I know everybody loves him in Ghostbusters, and I do too. But
Mm-hmm.
this was such a great role. And I know we're gonna, I think, talk about our favorite scene, and he's a big part of one of my favorite scenes, but he's so good and he's so well balanced for Brandon Lee. Like you can just tell the chemistry
Mm.
between them is real and genuine. And he's just, at least to me, he's been I met him 2016, I think, or 2017 at another con. He was great. He was so nice and ageless, y'all. The whole social media with him about being in his 70s, that is legit because he is ageless. I was looking at him the whole time like, how have you not aged since? I
Mm-hmm.
was like, if you're doing surgery, you can just let me know. I won't tell anybody. Hook me up here. But he just did a great job, I think, really balancing out and mentoring and just bringing the extra warmth that Brandon Lee brought to the film. He extended that warmth.
Yeah, absolutely. Kris, you also gave me a very quick look of affirmation when I mentioned this might be the best Ernie Hudson performance. Why does it work for you?
So first and foremost, as a kid, I was 8, right? So he was a Ghostbuster. I saw this
Yep,
movie. I'm like,
yep.
oh man. And I had that again on this rewatch. It's like, my man, Ernie Hudson, forgot he was here. And his voice is fantastic. No matter what he's saying or who he's speaking to, he's a joy to listen to. But then his character is so important to the film because he's sort of us.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking all of this in. He's rolling with the punches, but man, he's having a weird, weird night, like the rest of us watching the movie. Ernie Hudson is totally present here, despite how otherworldly the film is. His cop is super believable on the streets of Detroit. He's just great.
Amanda, I've just got to ask, you don't have to spoil your favorite scene just yet, but does it involve hot dogs and onions?
No, although they make you fart big time.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I want to echo everything you both just said, but the way I instantly fall in love with him, just with his line reading of onions when he asks for the onions on the hot dog, his familiarity with the hot dog vendor, the warmth with Sarah when she shows up, it just takes him mere seconds to just fully endear himself to us. And I was like, man, I've never loved this guy more. I mean, I've never not loved him, but it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like he was doing something so special here. It speaks to his talent and just also how much everyone really cared about this movie, Even, I forgot to shout out our girl Bai Ling earlier. Just yesterday, the day before we're recording this, the upcoming Lost documentary, interviewed Bai Ling. She famously appears in the most hated episode of Lost. It's not her fault that it's poorly written. But she's got such an amazing energy. And she talks about The Crow being her first American film and speaking little to no English at the time that she's filming the movie and not really knowing anything about Brandon Lee or his history. When he tries to explain that his dad was a famous movie star named Bruce Lee, she doesn't know what he's talking about until she gets on the phone with her friend who uses the Chinese name. And she's like, oh, that's your dad? And like, just feeling that she shared this special connection with him, right? And at least in her mind, she wants this film to live on in honor of Brandon Lee and everyone else. So yeah, we'll probably hear more on Ernie Hudson as the night goes on. Kris, what do we have for our next question here?
Let's not bury the lead any further. Amanda, what is your favorite scene in the
Oh
film?
man. So my favorite scene, this is the one I resonated with the most. And there's so many solid choices to go with, but the scene that gets me every single time, my eyes water, is the conversation that Ernie Hudson and Brandon Lee are having in the apartment that Eric Draven is having with
Mm,
Albrecht about what happened and to his death. Like what happened to us? That whole scene, especially, towards the end where Brandon Lee, you can tell Eric Draven's just processing everything and that he's just going through processing the information he's pulled from touching Albrecht's mind about what happened with Shelley. He's sitting kind of stunned on the kind of at the chair, leaning on it for support, and just oh, don't smoke these, they'll kill you, with the cigarettes, and just that whole dialogue was so moving. So much vulnerability between these two as they're talking about their losses, whether it is Albrecht's pending divorce, Eric Draven's loss of Shelley, and just processing those emotions, feeling her pain. That was so well done. It makes me tear up every single time, especially towards the end where, Eric Draven's walking out the door instead of vanishing into the mist. And I won't spoil my favorite line,
mm-hmm.
but that scene is just sheer perfection because it is such a beautiful still moment in the middle of all of the chaos that happens.
Mm.
That scene hits harder because of everything else going on around it.
Brilliantly said. I loved that stillness you just highlighted. They're in an apartment. It feels sort of normal. There's television on. I love that. And I also love that you highlighted the vulnerability there between these two
Mm-hmm.
guys. Nobody's guarded in that scene. These two men don't know each other, right? And that yet there's total vulnerability. No one is holding up
Mm-hmm.
any false pretenses. Albrecht immediately reveals that he's getting divorced, shares something personal. That's really well said. What about you, Randy? What's your favorite scene in the film?
This was a tough one. I just want to piggyback on Amanda's briefly to say, uh, I think one of my favorite things about that scene is just the fact that we live in this world where you so rarely feel like you are rewarded for caring about another human being. And for Eric to get the download and realize the time that Albrecht put in with Shelley when she was at the end of her life, it's just so powerful to see that be rewarded and build a connection. Um, I'm all over the place with my scene. I've got a couple candidates. One of them I think you could argue is more of a favorite shot than a scene. So I'm just going to go with kind of an obvious one here that I want to make sure someone says, because I bet my guy Kris says something reflective and beautiful like Amanda. But I'm just going to go with the big set piece, the big showdown at the big table with all the crime lords, for a couple of reasons. Obviously there's the most juvenile, like it's really fun element to it. You've got these folks who are going to be going on to be attached to great films. Amanda's already made a shout out or two in that department. We also have Jeff Imada there as the stunt coordinator, who like got to start working on things like Blade Runner and Lethal Weapon. He later went on to be the stunt coordinator on Blade, on LA Confidential, and a bunch of the sequels to like the Bourne movies. Kris and I were recently chatting about Equilibrium. We got two or three moves in there that I couldn't help but think of gun kata when I saw them. Not that we've got full gun kata in The Crow, but I felt like I saw some of those early seeds of that whole system. But it's also just the way he enters the room, the way he pops up on that table, the energy he's bringing. We've toned down like those most sadistic, vengeance fueled impulses, right? He's there for one person. He's there for one guy. And he's bringing this manic, silly energy. But the thing that caps it for me is when the police come in, they're holding him at gunpoint, and he does this little like marionette puppet sort of like sidestep out of the way that's so like goofy and fun and light and perfect. And the energy, like he's in the sweet spot there. So it's that emotional performance as well as a really fun action piece. So there's like just the absurd number of like guns and cash and drugs. I think this is the same table earlier in the movie where we see a plate with what can only be described as a mountain of cocaine. I actually had to pause the movie to laugh about. But yeah, so I'm going with the big action set piece, the big fight. Kris, what'd you go with?
So I didn't have anything particularly insightful or emotional. I was also going to pick the big long table set piece, but for me, it boils down to one moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Eric Draven's entrance, but Brendan Lee tosses the chair out of his way from the end of the table, and he jumps up and he lands crisscross applesauce like it's the most normal thing in the world. And it's just beautiful. It's brilliant. To your point, he is so in the character. The character's in his body at that point, and we're ready to rock. So I don't have anything else to say about it, but that moment of that scene is just perfection.
Since we repeated, I'm just going to do a quick honorable mention to the whole makeup scene, that whole entry back into the apartment, where he's in so much pain, collapsing around. I talked about the cat already. And yeah, that window. All right. Speaking of set pieces, speaking of windows, speaking of visuals that we really enjoyed, Amanda, I'm going to go to you first on this one. And that is, what is your favorite line of dialogue in the film? Could be something serious. It could be something fun or funny. I know we've been sneaking those in, or maybe a little bit of both.
Oh man, this is a tough choice because there's 3 lines that I love in this film. I'm only gonna pick 2, my top 2. One of them is a funny one that I use all the time, way more than I should. Whenever I get really frustrated or mad, especially when I'm in traffic, I call people stupid ass hairs a lot.
Yeah.
Because that line cracked me up where it's just like, here's this little car and this big guy gets out of the car after Skank just gets basically like just collides with him. This big guy and he's like, "You stupid ass hair, you ruined my car." And he just jacks him. And I'm like, I can't. I've never heard those 2 terms put together and it was glorious and I've used it ever since. And my boyfriend's just like, "Really?" really? Because I'm like, look at this stupid ass hair. And I'm like, of course, I'm not with my son in the car, but I'm just like, I'm the passenger too who will say something when you're driving and, chime in.
Yes.
And I'm the backup one. He gets frustrated and I back up. And that line, I have to shout that one out because I use that one every day, probably a lot more than I should. Um, but the line that gets me every single time is at the end of the apartment scene where Ernie Hudson says, "So are you going to vanish out the front door? Are you going to vanish out into the wind again or walk away in the wind or something like along those lines?" I know I'm messing up the line. Ironically, the one time I say it all the time correctly and I don't do it this time. Um, but Eric Draven just looks at him and says, "I thought I'd use your front door." The weight in that line, the vulnerability, the
Hmm.
look he gives. I've seen this movie thousands of times, I feel like. Every single time, that line and that look hurt my heart because it's perfectly delivered, perfectly done, and it's so eloquent.
Hmm.
It's just the simplicity of the line, but the delivery just chef's kiss on that.
Chris, how about for you? What's your favorite line of dialogue in this film?
I also have a two-parter. One funny, one more heartfelt. So, Top Dollar speaks unlike any human in the real world that I've ever encountered, but he's so committed to it. At no point does it feel like he's doing a bit. It feels like this character is aware that he has a persona that he totally owns. When Top Dollar said, "Our friend T-Bird won't be joining us this evening on account of a slight case of death." On account of a slight case of death has always stayed with me. I love the idea of presenting the loss of their companion as blandly as a weather report. Um, Really fantastic delivery there from Top Dollar. But much more seriously, Eric Draven, later in speaking about Shelley and reflecting
Hmm.
on life, he says that little things used to mean so much to Shelley. I
Hmm.
used to think they were kind of trivial. Believe me, nothing is trivial. How many
Hmm.
of us wish we could go back and live a part of our lives with the wisdom we have now? Right.
Yep.
And that's not quite what he's getting to do here. He's not back from the dead. But while he's back, he has a chance to reflect. He has a chance to think about, boy, if I could do it all again. And I think that is such a wise line. Nothing is trivial. Our lives, our world is made up of all the little things that we share. So great line.
Yeah. Once again, Chris, just naturally picking out the most beautiful moment in a film. Thank you for that. I'll start with a joke one. Apologies if I'm misnaming this particular member of the gang because they don't all get a ton of name drops, but I believe it's Fun Boy.
It is fun,
When
boy.
Eric,
Yes.
yeah, when Eric finally shoots him in the leg, he's not dead yet. And his response is, "Look what you've done to my sheets," just before he passes out.
That's adulting right there, though. I get that. I think that hits harder as an adult when you rewatch that and you're like, "Man," 'cause my first thought was, "Can you get that out of your sheets?" When he says that.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
this. I mean, I have to kind of like compartmentalize and forget like the absolute horror of their crimes. But if we put that aside for a minute, what a fun crew of guys for your gang of your gang of villains. But no, my favorite moment is going to be going back to Ernie Hudson, and folks who know me, I would say know my kindness. I think I am earnest and genuine in how much I enjoy wanting to bring people together, how much I enjoy gentleness. But I am also someone who can get very frustrated and a little bit self-righteous and want to, hold on to an opinion until the bitter end, even when all good sense would tell me not to. So when Ernie Hudson's Albrecht character is getting pushed around by this jerk detective who seems to have taken his job or at least held on to his position in the face of Albrecht just not wanting to play this game of appearances and politics. He's getting taunted. And this jerky police officer points out to him, "I see they took away your gold shield." And just Ernie Hudson's delivery of, "Yeah, I guess I wasn't a big enough asshole," just really resonated in my soul because if you don't know me in my work life, you might not know how quickly I bring that kind of energy. So to see it validated on screen made me feel great. So that's going to be my favorite line of dialogue. Oh my goodness, Kris, let's jump back to you. What's your favorite shot in this film?
I'm glad to go first because I am going to steal the one that I think probably most folks who haven't even seen the movie think of, and it's the eyeball through the hand, right? He's been shot
Hmm.
through the hand after putting his hand on the muzzle of a gun, and he's laughing and he peers through. I'm not sure if that was in the trailer or the promos back then, but I've always had that attached to this character. When I think of him, I think of his power set. That's the first thing I think
Hmm.
of. That he's invulnerable. He can be harmed, but he can't be killed. Um,
Hmm.
it wasn't lost on me as a kid that he's feeling everything that he experiences.
Hmm.
I think Top Dollar even says like that had to hurt, and he thinks he's dead, so he's being ironic, but it did. That had to hurt. He's healing from it quickly, but like Wolverine, it's gotta suck in the moment. But he doesn't wince. He doesn't react. He puts his hand over the muzzle of that gun, and then he looks. He peers right through the hand, and the film doesn't have a lot of gore for as much violence as it has.
Hmm.
We see dead bodies. We don't often see people get killed, right? Like we see Tintin with 7 knives in his chest. We see Fun
Yep.
Boy with all the needles. We don't see those things happen. So to actually see the hand with the hole and to be looking through it in the eyeball just always worked for me.
Hmm.
What about
Great
you,
choice.
Amanda?
That's a solid choice. I mean, I just even remember the laughing like the woohoo, like just that was such a interesting comedic moment too. In a
Hmm.
weird way, it's like it's gonna go down between the two of them, but just a little bit of that Joker Eric Draven came out, and that was fun to see. So great choice,
Hmm.
Chris. For me, I have to go with the scene that I fell in love with that just sunk me into the movie within the first like first 10-15 minutes. Um, and that has to be the shot where this maybe a little bit of thirst comes into, I think. No
Hmm.
disrespect to Brandon Lee, but is an attractive man. Um, the scene where he is putting on the clothing for the crow, the way that that was done, and it's one of those scenes where it's powerful because you feel that transformation, but it's a little sexy and it brings that goth energy, but just seeing his arm go through the sleeve, just putting the clothes on, and you would think something like putting clothes on is a simple thing, and it's a thing that we take for granted, but it really is.
Hmm.
Describes who we are, and I love that about the scene. So that shot was gorgeous. Then you just see the boots walk up, and he
Hmm.
pets Gabriel, and then the transformation is complete. So, I mean,
Yep.
just to have that follow the makeup, everyone sees the makeup scene with the lips and the way it's done in the mirror, which is also
Hmm.
beautiful. But there's something again about him layering and putting on the crow persona that just hits home. And it was again simple, but it was so cool. And you see the scars like on his stomach and stuff. Like I was like, that was just, and it just made you want to dress like that straight up. Like I was like,
Hmm.
I want to be cool and goth. I was a super nerd, by the way, as a kid, like super embraces all of it. So I was like, I want to be cool like that. That was just such a cool shot, the way that was done with the crow and the cure in the background too. So
Yeah.
piece de
Yeah.
resistance.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. How do you choose, anytime he's walking and that crow comes up to land on the shoulder is an A plus. Every time he bursts into a room, it's an A plus. Every time we're anywhere near that picture window with the perfectly broken panes of glass, that works, like if I really had to pick one, I suppose I would pick just before the makeup reveal, the shot from behind as he's walking up toward the window. You've got some flashes even before we get the reveal from the front is just really incredible. Another moment that I wanted to say for the scene, but I'm going to smuggle it in here. Just that moment after he kills off all the gang leaders, he's calming down, and this group of kids in costumes just kind of come laughing by him, and he's got this look of joy and relief across his face. Like maybe there is still some goodness in the world, and you read that on him, and whatever dark depths he's gone through are there. And yeah, I'm just doing a third one. I'm sorry. I love you guys.
No, no,
You're
this
Apologies.
is great.
Uh, but if I really had to pick just one like cinematic brilliant moment, it's just before the final confrontation. You get this vertical shot from like the ceiling of the church straight down on the pews, and they are all dilapidated and crooked, and it's this really beautiful scene. Even Tim Burton himself had to have been jealous of some of the sets and shots in this movie. It's a really beautiful film. I love this era of the inky black comic book movies.
mm. Yeah, it's almost Sin City in its inkiness, despite not being black and white. I thought somebody would say it, so I didn't pick it. I can't let us move past this segment without at least highlighting the dropped lighter on the gasoline crow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just beautiful, iconic, um, just badass moment, badass 90s movie moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a testament to the movie that we could leave that on the table.
Well
Um,
said.
Yeah.
with just the embarrassment of riches. But yeah,
Mm.
uh, great spectacle. All right, where are we going next, Chris?
I was going to say, I think we've talked visuals. Let's talk sound. I think we have mentioned the iconic soundtrack a few times here tonight. So maybe we can get a little more specific. Let's start with you, Randy. What track would you say hits the hardest, and why for you?
All right, as you've both stated multiple times, this soundtrack absolutely rules. It's full of several of my personal faves. I know Amanda and I have already bonded over Nine Inch Nails. We're also both huge fans of I'm Afraid of Americans, the Trent Reznor, David Bowie crossover. So anything Nine Inch Nails gets their hands on is going to be fantastic. I'm a huge Stone Temple Pilots guy. I was so happy that I got a chance to finally see Scott Weiland in concert. Before he passed away in my adulthood. So we've got Big Empty in here, but I'm trying to figure out like what hits the hardest in the film, what worked for me. Um, the, we've got Rage Against the Machine here, another personal favorite. But I'm actually going to go with a band that I'd kind of forgotten the existence of. I could not have named this track to you beforehand, but as I was going back to revisit it, I'm, believe it or not, going to go with Machines of Loving Grace, Golgotha Tenement Blues, because that just goes so hard with the industrial sound and the grittiness. And like the song kicks in, and I just feel Eric Draven popping in through a window the second it hits. And I was like, that's the movie. This is the band that I've never heard of again, but that might be the track that goes the hardest for me in this entire film. I surprised myself with that pick, but it was just so damn fun.
Love that for you. Excellent pick. Top quality podcasting. Love that. Amanda, what about you?
Oh man, solid choice, Randy. I love that track too. It's sexy, it's
Hmm.
fun. It's like it's one of those that it's one that gets played over and over again for me. This was hard because there are two tracks, but I had to go with one the one
Hmm.
that resonated with me the most. And y'all know Nine Inch Nails is my favorite band in the whole wide world. Like, I mean, I only have one music bay, and that is Trent Reznor. Hence, my handle on X
I
is Reznor's chick. Um,
was going to say,
uh,
spoiler alert.
Yes, yes. I've seen Nine Inch Nails every single time they've come to Texas. I adore the band so much. Anytime they have a new project,
Hmm.
I'm listening. It would take a behemoth to not make me pick, even though as much as I love this cover of Joy Division, they nailed it.
Hmm.
It's only going to take one. And this band is one of my top two. Other than Nine Inch Nails, this is the other band that I love and adore, The Cure, Burn. Because that song, one, I believe was originally written for the film.
Hmm.
And two, it's The Cure. Robert Smith, man. I
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. If I finally got to see The Cure last year, finally, that was a bucket list goal of mine. And they played the song live, and it sounds immaculate live. It's one of those that I was like, "Oh
Hmm.
gosh, please don't get butchered." It's Robert Smith. He sounds immaculate live like he does on straight up recording. And this song just hits so hard because you have the ethereal elements to it. The lyrics are
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Um, and it's so haunting. And it's forever in my mind tied to the makeup to where he becomes the crow.
Yep.
I love everything about the song. It had to take an act of sheer strength, as sheer just you had to have it had to be the most multifaceted song to beat My Man Trent, because that is a lot for me to say My Man second place. But Robert Smith, just The Cure, Burn, beautifully done. He even plays the little, I don't know if it's like a flute or something, but he plays it all live. He plays it like right to open it up,
Mm,
which is cool. If
Whoa.
y'all ever get to hear him, get to hear The Cure live, they are playing Burn live again.
Dope.
beautiful. Kris, how about you?
I think so it's STP. It's Stone Temple Pilots
So good.
for me. Yeah,
Nice.
it's a great song on its own. So like it's got plenty of other air time, but here in the film it's right as Eric is coming out of his grave. So it's pretty intrinsically tied to like this character, to this moment for him in the film. But the opening lyrics are so perfectly 90s. They're so perfectly of the time. The song is ready to rock, but it's poetry at its heart, right? And when his voice comes in, driving faster in my car, just that first lyric, it sucks you right in. You can't wait to hear more. It's a beautiful tune and it works beautifully in this film.
Oh, solid choice. Solid choice. That little thing in the beginning, just that opening note
Mm-hmm.
sucks you in. That's a solid choice too, Kris.
Yeah, the guitar is so
Grunge.
haunting in that.
Yeah, grunge is my stuff. I mean, it's hard to pick a genre, but these were storytellers. These were feeling musicians.
Nobody can recreate grunge. That was truly an era, and I'm glad we lived
Mm-hmm.
through it, y'all. We
Mm.
got it. We're spoiled, and I'm okay with that.
We'll have to do a whole grunge episode at some point, Kris.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That being said, what an incredible soundtrack. Who knows? Maybe we'll come back and do a deeper dive into that someday as well. But I want to now talk about what has the lasting impact of this film been on the world of popular cultures. This big movie, it means a lot to us, even though it came to all three of us at different points in our lives. We've heard about what it means to us personally. We've talked a little bit about some of the great creators who came out of this team, who've been out there making great stuff. Um, but do you see the fingerprints of this project still out there in the world around us? Amanda, what do you think? How big is the impact of this film?
It's huge. I know a lot of times we're talking about the performances and the
Mm-hmm.
visuals, but let's not forget the CGI that was done. The way that they were able
Mm-hmm.
to finish this film because of the advancements in that technology were able to, I think they were just a lot of the precursors to the technology that we see now. I mean, the fact that they were able to take this graphic or this image of Brandon Lee coming out from the grave where he's shivering in the first scene and then insert that later in the film, and still when he's going down the stairs they have that shivering scene again, or even to CGI him in the mirror when he punches it and just kind of put him in, or the lightning scene, Randy, you
Mm-hmm.
talked about earlier. That was timed out to where when the lightning flashed you saw the CGI graphic of Brandon Lee's face, because I want to say that
Yep.
was Chad Stawalski that was
Mm.
probably doing that part. But just the CGI was so ahead of its time that
Mm-hmm.
it's still incredible to think that in 1994 we were able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool. And then of course again just the fact that Chaz Stawalski, we have him and again, I'm a big John Wick fan, so seeing some of his work and his legacy and knowing that he got started as a stunt double, and so of course he's able to bring that knowledge into his films and his projects when he's going down that road, especially for something like John Wick. Um, that legacy was interesting. I feel like that's such a cool way that it launched the careers for other people that are still resonating to this day. So again, that's CGI though. That's my pick there.
Kris, how about you? How do you see the impact of this film on the media world you're living in today?
You know, I'm always interested in looking back at the comic book adaptations that worked, that didn't work, because we now live in a world where IP is king, right? And always through the 80s, we were looking for things to adapt, to take from one aspect of popular culture and cash in on them at the cinema. So this is certainly not a new concept by 94, but I think you can see in The Crow, I think I said earlier, the makings of the kind of protagonist that would work moving forward for a more nuanced, evolved audience. And you see that even an off the beaten path graphic novel doesn't just have to find a niche audience, it can have some commercial appeal. And so it's hard to look at a movie like The Crow and not think of all of the comic book or IP driven media that we're inundated with today.
Mm-hmm.
Inundated maybe has negative connotations. Like we're not drowning in the flood that is this content. Some of it is less nutritious than others. But I think I look at movies like this and I credit them for where we're at today, where we can see some of the things that we loved on the page brought to life on the screen. So thoughtfully, so like with a sense of art and not irony, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not being done tongue in cheek. They said this is something that your parents would be terrified to think you were reading, but they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
watch the movie. So yeah.
Do you?
What about you?
Yeah.
What about you, Randy?
This movie gets me just thinking about the way pop culture transitions. Because, before I talk about its impact, all of the influences on this movie are clear. Like, obviously, you've got, the beautiful artwork of the graphic novels. I haven't read them, but, I've seen a lot of the imagery and the vibe and the energy. And obviously, that's, one of the biggest sources for the look. But, I mentioned a couple times already Tim Burton, you know, Kris and I both really love Batman Returns. The Crow probably doesn't look exactly the way it looks without Batman Returns, without Tim Burton, without his vibe, right? I mean, Eric Draven is partly Edward Scissorhands, but with a bit more of an edge, right? Like you see this connective tissue in the DNA, and then time evolves and it's its own thing. And we mentioned Heath Ledger earlier. The Joker is a different character than Eric Draven, but we don't get that character if he's not looking and seeing some of what worked from Brandon Lee and The Crow. That's a character who we're interested in understanding. He doesn't have a warmth to him like The Crow, but those pieces are there. The similarities in the makeup are no mistake. When it comes down to all of that. And even, granted, this piece of it has faded a little bit, but just the way this movie almost single-handedly defined goth culture, um, like this apartment that they share, their little gothic love nest with their Halloween wedding on the horizon. She's up there making her own dress. They've got their makeup table. The candle budget for this film must have been astronomical. The fire hazards involved, the little proposal up in the attic full of candles. It's a beautiful look. But even like that deep red room, like the iron sort of bed frames, the candles everywhere. It's just such an iconic look. All the leather, even, I was a little silly about it in my synopsis, but when Shelley comes back in the closing moments of the movie, she's got the white dress, but it's kind of like half dress, half lingerie, like translucent, sort of gothic-y, sort of really beautiful costume piece that's coming into it. So just like that cultural impact, that vibe is still cool. Your cosplay we talked about earlier still looks so freaking cool in 2024. It doesn't matter. We don't need to count up those years. It doesn't matter the years have passed. But yeah, just culturally, visually, artistically, this movie, it's in our DNA and it's not going anywhere.
So well said. I think that there are probably like tons of folks, male and female, clad in tight leather pants and skin tight shirts who don't even know where the reference comes from. But it really all comes back to The Crow and that beautiful sleeve entrance moment that you highlighted earlier.
Yes,
Amanda. Well, I think we've treated this film with a fair bit of authentic love and an authentic criticism. I would now like to bring us into a bit that we do here on Media Lit. Amanda, as our guest, you get to answer first. But especially because this podcast is based on things that we have loved from our past. This movie is, sorry, Randy, 30 years old.
It burns.
Yes.
I know. Like,
We have to ask ourselves, does the plot hold up if even one person has a modern day cell phone in the film? Could this movie be made the same way today?
oh, that's tough. I was thinking about this question a lot. I feel like so I'm trying not to go with the it depends. I'm really trying. I'm trying to give you like a straight answer. And I've been trying. This is the question that's been going in my mind since I've seen this, since I saw the first draft of the notes. But I honestly feel like it wouldn't, because you have the cell phone, you get help right away. You're going to have teenagers on their cell phones. You're going to be able to track everybody down. You got like you got like Google Maps on your phone. You can track anybody via phone too. So I feel like
Mhm.
some of the searching for the different villains and the group, trying to track down like where are they located, you're going to lose a lot of that personal interaction. And then I can only imagine Sarah on her cell phone like tweeting or like posting, oh, my friends died, or like, I feel like there's the relationships and the dialoguing with each other and the intent behind that to again build those relationships will get lost with a modern cell phone. And I feel like everything would have been resolved so much faster, and we would have it's like, oh wait, I know where Tintin is. He's got his location turned on. Let's just look at Snapchat and see where they're all at. Um, and so I just feel like we would have been at a resolution much faster, probably within an hour or 2 hours, and then Eric Draven would have gone back to rest in peace in like 2 hours. So
quick,
I'm
uh,
gonna
quick,
say it wouldn't have worked.
quick question, Amanda. Do you think that Tintin has a separate Instagram page for each of his favorite knives?
I could believe that. Or a separate, tweet. He's got, that's like Tintin's knives. He's tweeting on X. Last scene.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, Chris, I've got one or two mini thoughts, but I want to defer to you, the master of this exercise. Does it work without cell phones, or can we make it work?
Okay. I was going to say, I was prepared to declare this plot in this film cell phone proof because it doesn't feel like a lack of information, or like if they could just Google a thing, it would be easier. But you've convinced me, Amanda. I think while you were speaking, two things stood out to me. I would have felt better about the discovery of sort of how to kill the crow, because today, if we made the movie, that character would have just been like, oh, some cultures believe that crows carry souls. And then they would have come to that conclusion that way. But then more specifically, the character of Sarah, I think she changes drastically if she's a young person today. Maybe the crow doesn't come back from the dead and start like hacking cell phones and using geolocation, but certainly that character of Sarah looks and feels a lot different. She's behaving differently. She probably has a different level of support in her life and different places she can go and things she can do just by having that cell phone in her hand and more people she can connect with versus just having to go to the hot dog stand and talk to the friendliest cop around.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna try to pull off the trick of agreeing with both of you, in the sense that there are certain obstacles that come up here, but I think there are possible solutions built into the setup of the story, right? In terms of Sarah, she's going to be a different teen, yes, in a modern day with cell phones. But her mom is really struggling. She's really lost. She's not fully there. We do have a very real digital divide in this country. So I think I can still easily imagine like a version of Sarah, like who does not have that same access to the technologies the teens were accustomed to seeing. So I think that can fully work for us. And then on the flip side, this criminal network we're dealing with, they're very much off the grid. Top Dollar is going to need to mobilize technology to his advantage to build his empire. But he's got these little low-level goons doing his bidding for him. And I think they're going to be all about chaos, anarchy, being off the grid as much as possible. So I think there's some workarounds where we can find a way to make it work, even though there are certainly some complications. Although I guess maybe Ernie Hudson's character might be in a little bit of trouble with a body cam.
True.
Ooh, great call.
But we're not talking
True.
about body cams, are we? We're talking
I
about cell
I
phones.
just I just would be curious to see what Skank would tweet or, put a post on social media. That would be interesting.
How many retweets does fire it up get?
Oh my goodness. That's the best. So Amanda, our next bit here on Media Lit is I always like to ask, it's not quite the same as asking if there's a flaw, but is there one small edit you could make to this film to make it even stronger than the masterpiece it already is?
Oh man, that is tough. I I'm wondering, and this is just something I think more or less, I do feel bad that Shelley doesn't, and again, it's not again necessarily because of the writing, again, this is due to the circumstances of the film, but Shelley does not have much dialogue outside of, kind of her immediate, while she's her death scene, if you will, like, just as she's getting carted away in the ambulance and she's like, "Hey, take care of Sarah." Like she really has no lines outside of, or very few lines outside of that. It would have been nice to have had her maybe say, and I know there's a lot of power in silence as
Mm-hmm.
well. I think the way she approached Eric at the coffin as she touched his hair,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been nice to maybe have had like a line of some sort, or like, "You did good," or like something where she had a chance to, outside of being in distress, have
Mm.
more dialogue. Like, even if not necessarily even at that end scene, but even if and again, I know a lot of the scenes between her and Brandon Lee in the casual context were not filmed very much outside of what we got because he passed before more of that content could be filmed. But it's hard because I wish she would have had more non and non-death or non-distress moments. A little
Yes.
bit more dialogue and interaction between the two of them. Again, not any fault of, again, it's due to the circumstances, but how much more profound would the love story have been if you had more interaction
Mm.
with Shelley and
Mm-hmm.
Eric? That was tough, but I would have loved to have seen her have more lines.
I fully agree with you on Shelley. I would really love to see a conversation between Shelley and Sarah to
Yes.
more fully understand what that big sistery sort of dynamic was. We could improve our Bechdel test score as well, seeing that connection, because Eric does seem to be part of this little mini family, but he's clearly a secondary character in it. Like I feel like they're often hanging out when he's off at band practice with Hangman's Joke. Great band name, I call it. Um, but yeah, but another female character I'd love to see served better is Bai Ling, and in the context of that relationship, for me, the incestuous layer of the relationship is an unnecessary vice to add to the picture. I'd love to see her character filled out a little bit more so that she and Top Dollar can really be a foil to Eric and Shelley. Like we've got a little bit more sense of how they interact, and we see some fuller conversation there as well. And those be two little things that would really level this film up. But yeah, it's tough to improve on an amazing film. Kris, what direction did you go with this whole thing?
So I truly don't think you can make the movie better simply, right? There's things that could have gone differently, right? If Brandon Lee had passed, things that could have gone differently. But I think, in stretching myself, if they had more time to spend with this movie, if we were more interested in some of um, our secondary or tertiary characters, I
Mm-hmm.
really liked that they found time for Eric to do some good in the world
Mm-hmm.
as he squeezes. Like, that's a supernatural thing that's happening. You can't squeeze the morphine from a person's arm that way. He takes it from
Mm-hmm.
her body. He wakes her up somehow, the mother of Sarah. If we had I loved the scene between them when Sarah finally calls her
Mm-hmm.
mom and then tells her how to cook the eggs. Really beautiful. That scene doesn't need to
Yes.
change.
Yeah.
I could have seen those two together somewhere in the closing montage after all the dust has settled. I would have been liked to have left with something of a, because the movie does have what you'd call a happy ending, right? It isn't trying to be sort of overly dramatic or gut punchy. It's no, he accomplishes his goal. He gets to move on to a peaceful afterlife with his wife. I would have liked to have seen maybe a moment where we understand what happens to Albrecht after that, Ernie Hudson's character.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a moment of Sarah just going home, I think is what I was thinking of. Like, we never see her,
Mm-hmm.
no matter where she's going, whether it's the bar where her mom works, the hot dog stand, the graveyard constantly. She's
Mm-hmm.
never going home. And so it would have been nice to see at the very end. Maybe if the sun's coming up and she goes home, could have been all right. But
Or, Darla could have come when the cops were all there. She could have come and like hugged Sarah. Like, even if it's not anything, a lot of dialogue you want to add, just that simple gesture if she was there because she cared. Like my daughter was there and there was a shootout. It's just,
love
that would
that.
have been a interesting touch to it. But great choices for both of y'all.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's that time of the podcast where I have to sadly announce that it's coming to an end. It feels a little bit dreary and hopeless in moments like this, but remember, it can't rain all the time. Thank you for those pity laughs. No, I do hope that we will all be back together podcasting about something before too long, because I had just an absolute and total blast. At this point in the podcast, I always like people to shout out some of their social media handles, their upcoming work. Amanda, do you have any light you can shed on future coverage specifically on The Crow that people can get from you in the coming months? Do you have any sense of what that might look like?
Yes. So actually in August, we will be dropping our bonus. We call it our bonus episode. So we're going to have a special episode, kind of to time out with the new movie, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. So I'm sure we'll give our thoughts on that. And actually, we the timing worked out because we actually are going to have, my significant other, my short king, because the short king spring all the time here. We're gonna have
Yes.
Brandon on. Yes. So we're gonna have Brandon on, and we're trying to make this work around his schedule because we want him for that episode because he also
Mm-hmm.
very much loves this movie. It is something that the two of us bonded over right away. And both of us again enjoy cosplaying. We've watched the movie many times. He's reading the graphic novel right now, and it's just something that we both love and connect with. So we're going to be talking about the movie in depth, the '94 movie, and we'll also be sharing again depending on when we record. We will either have seen the new film or maybe be about to see it. So I'm sure we'll touch on that. But that coverage is going to be coming up on the Socially Distance again sometime in August, and we'll announce that as we get closer to that time frame.
I just want to recommend Amanda's Socially Distanced podcast to all of our listeners. They cover a lot of nerd culture, but they'll touch on other topics. Like there was the recent Bridgerton episode. Kris and I are from Massachusetts and not as deep into the football fandom as we once were, but I know you've got a whole NFC East support group. Is that correct?
That is
Uh,
correct. Our
yeah.
NFC East group therapy sessions, those help us because as fans of, again, I'm a Cowboys fan here. We've got the Commanders, we've got the Giants fans over there. Our football team stressed us multiple times in a season.
But it's just always a great show over there. They're always inviting on their diverse group of friends who have great opinions and experiences to bring to the table. So definitely check it out. Amanda, where else can folks find you on the internet?
Well, yes, as Randy mentioned, I am one of the co-hosts for the Socially Distanced podcast, which you can listen to on all streaming platforms. Again, appreciate your kind words, Randy, because we enjoy having you as a guest. We are looking forward to having you back to talk about the new Doctor Who season, which Kris, I hope you watch. It's going to be great. So we're excited to have you back on, and Kris will definitely be in touch because we'd love to have you on as well. We are actually inspired by X-Men 97 as well, which I'm going to tell everybody,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not watching it, drop what you're doing, go watch it. Especially this week's episode was fantastic. We are getting ready to do and Randy, you know this because we did our
Mm-hmm.
Avengers draft. But we're going to be doing an X-Men fantasy draft as well. So we're excited.
Hell yes.
Yeah. So we're excited to be doing that. But I'm also the co-host of Anime Pop as well, which is on the newly rebranded Pop Break. We used to have the Pop Break TV and Pop Break Today. They have merged to make one happy podcast streaming family, and it is the Pop Break now on all streaming platforms. The Anime Pop, we talk about anime news, recommendations, and we spotlight a particular anime that we are watching, or anime. Sometimes it's a double feature that are hot and buzzing and are happening right now out there. So our last episode, we just covered Kaiju number 8, which is great if you're an anime fan. Fantastic. And then Go Go Loser Ranger, which we covered. If you like Evil Power Rangers and the Boys, that's a great anime to check out. And then we just finished recording our episode, and I'm excited for this next one to come out. And it's going to be on the season premiere of My Hero Academia, which we were excited to have our wonderful power duo over at Blurred Watchers, Marshall and Courtney, joining us as our guests. So check that out. That episode should be dropping here, I think next week. So actually Monday. So more to come on that. And of course, I am at Mandalorian on Instagram and Threads. And Brandon and I have a couples cosplay account at Brandalorian, which we've got lots of activity going on that. We post all of our cosplays there. So check us out. I mean, we do Star Wars cosplays, a lot of anime cosplays. We're actually going to be doing a Sandman cosplay this coming weekend. So excited that's
Nice.
brand new for us to do. So we're excited to do that. And I am at Resner Schick on X as well. And of course, follow the Pop Break on all social media platforms. I want to say we're the Pop Break TV, or Pop Break .tv, I think, on YouTube. Bill will correct me at some point, but we're a little different on YouTube, but the Pop Break everywhere else. And again, thank you guys so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I mean, if y'all want me back anytime, just let me know. You guys are fantastic. Again, we're looking forward to having y'all both on both.
Yes.
podcasts.
Yeah, buddy.
Kris, where can folks find you and or your work?
Thank you, Amanda. This was awesome. Really, really fantastic. Folks let me just say, cannot believe you snagged a Mandalorian.
I know,
as
right?
a socials handle. That is unbelievable nerd credibility right there. For me, I am only on Instagram. You can find me at Kris_Ingersoll. That is Kris spelled like Kringle. Lots of videos, I think I've said before, me and my daughter and my wife just being silly outside for the most part. But every once in a while, you'll catch some commercial or film work that I do too. So tune in.
And I am your host, Randy Elaine. You can find me on Twitter at Mr_Elaine, ALLAIN. I've got links to all my portfolios and articles and whatnot. As I'm recording this, I am gearing up for Doctor Who review season. I anticipate this will probably post May 31st. So at that point, you should be able to hop over to thepopbreak.com and find several write-ups from me. You will likely be able to look to the week prior to this going out to hear me on Socially Distanced talking about the new Doctor Who episodes with Amanda and Bill and probably Alex Marcus over there. Whoever else wants to show up, it'll be a good old time. And you can also, of course, find me also on the Pop Break feed that Amanda was so kind to explain a moment ago on every pod you cast with Justin and Kris Mancini. We are almost at the end of our police coverage, and we're already working on the next music project. So it's not, I will not reveal the new band just yet, but we are approaching a decision. So that should be a good time. And then finally, I just want to encourage any of our listeners who'd like to reach out to us to hit us up via email at media.slash.lit@gmail.com. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.